Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Clifford Winston, economist and author of the upcoming book, Market Corrections, Not Government Interventions, A Path to Improve the U.S. Economy. Clifford, thanks so much for joining me once again.
All right, good to talk with you again.
President Trump announced a monumental change to the H-1B visa program last month, the imposition of a $100,000 application fee. And domestic companies use this type of visa to employ foreign talent in industries like tech, and the six-figure fee could really radically change that. You wrote that this was just the latest example of the Trump administration's war on innovation. So to start off the conversation, talk to us about what you meant.
Firms bring in talent from abroad really for reasons that have to do with just advancing their technology. They think they can help them in ways that maybe the domestic workers can't, they have better training, or they're specialized. It's just something that we don't specialize in, so they get these people to do it, and it helps them. And so they bring them in, and there's nothing at all benign about this in terms of what their strategies are. They're just trying to be more innovative and competitive. And so if you're going to make it more difficult to bring in people like this, obviously it's changing the culture. It's not so much that it's $100,000. I mean, obviously for some smaller firms, that's a lot, but for obviously, Microsoft or Google or you name it, they can afford that. It's just the attitude. It's a culture. You're anti-innovation, which is, very bad because innovation is the key to growth, and growth is what's responsible for our material quality of life.
And President Trump, I don't think, would argue that he's anti-innovation in this decision. This is what the White House said about it. Quote, the H-1B non-immigrant visa program was created to bring temporary workers into the United States to perform additive, high-skilled functions, but it has been deliberately exploited to replace rather than supplement American workers with lower-paid, lower-skilled labor. The large-scale replacement of American workers through systemic abuse of the program has undermined both our economic and national security. What do you make of their reasoning there?
Their reasoning is not accompanied by evidence. It would be helpful if, when they made a statement like that, they sort of pointed out, here are all these, quote, highly trained workers in America that are unemployed. And they're unemployed because they can't get jobs that are being filled by foreign people with H-1B visas. I don't think there's any evidence to support that whatsoever. There's plenty of room for talented, well-trained people to be employed in this country. And I don't think there's a shred of evidence to say that's really what's going on when our firms are bringing in foreign talent. I think they want it for specialization. My guess is also it's competitive. In other words, this claim that they're underpaying them, it makes it look like that our foreign firms, our domestic firms are monopsonists. That is, there's only one who's buying foreign talent. And that's obviously not true. If someone tries to hire a foreign person and says, yes, we'll give you a visa, but we're going to pay you, very low wages, they'll say, forget it. I mean, I'm not going to come, or better yet, I'm going to go somewhere else and I'm sure be able to get a more reasonable wage. So it's not like there's only one, quote, American firm that's hiring foreign people and greatly underpaying them. That's not how it works.
We've seen really since the past decade, President Trump say that he is the president, he's the leader that puts America first. He wants to put American workers first. And his argument here, I bet if he was sitting with you instead of me sitting with you, he would say, hey, I'm putting the American worker first here by putting this threshold of $100,000. Hopefully that opens up more spots for an American worker. What would you say to that argument?
First, I would start out with this basic premise. Americans put America first. He does not put America first, right? We are what we are because of a collective effort by the people who live and work in this country. And a lot of it is from collaboration, innovation, spontaneity, working with a whole range of people, both domestic people and foreign people. Let us sort this out. We've been doing it since we've been a nation, and it's been working. I think the notion that we need a president to allow us to, quote, be better is ridiculous. I think the idea is they should provide the environment and the incentives for us to be first, but let us sort it out. And I think by stepping in and saying, I'm going to make it harder for certain people to be hired in this country without thinking how these people can help not only the firms, but other workers. Does he ever think that some guy is hired from abroad and he teaches other workers something? I have to speak for myself here. I've had foreign people who've come in on visas, work for me as research assistants, and they're invaluable. I mean, they teach me things that, I frankly have not got up on, and they know it. And that's valuable. So this is the sort of thing, this is a collaborative effort. And I don't think that Trump appreciates how much that research, development, innovation really is collaboration. That's key. And you don't sort of think of this as zero sum, that if I hire a foreign person, I'm hurting a domestic person. No, we're working together on this. And I just don't think he sees that.
We've really been in the past couple of years at a paradigm shift when it comes to tech, when it comes to AI, especially because of AI. And if you're saying that this could really tamp down on innovation, what do you think the implications are domestically long term with the change to the H-1B visa program?
Well, I mean, this is going to take a while. I mean, innovation is one of these sort of mysteries in economics for the obvious reason. If I knew how to innovate, or any policymaker knew how to innovate, what could do it? Who do we need to support, right? All this kind of thing, we'd be doing it. But we know it's very spontaneous in unpredictable ways, right? Somebody in a garage is working on a computer, right? And next thing we know, we have Apple. Or, some kid drops out of college and starts funding a company. And next thing we know, we have Microsoft. I mean, there are all these kinds of stories. And the point being, it's very hard to sort of determine when the sparks are going to fly, when everything is going to come together. It's not often, but when it does, it makes a huge difference. And so what I'm getting at is it's all about culture. You just need to allow things to happen. That is what is so different about America than other countries, is we allow that kind of flourishing. And just one final point, we fund it. There's money available to fund these things once these promising ideas are shown.
And to that point, no one ever sits down and says, you know what, I am going to innovate today. Today is the day. It's on my calendar. Innovation comes from that random collaboration, perhaps a pop-up conversation that you have with someone and they spark an idea inside of you. I'm curious, what do you think the international implications are? Are other countries right now, do you think, looking at this and saying, hey, it's prime time to poach some talent?
China has that attitude. I mean, there's sort of various jokes about other countries and trying to do this. I mean, the biggest problem with China is still the Communist Party. Yes, I mean, what China struggles with is they like the capitalism part. They just have real trouble understanding the freedom part. And, how that can work, they don't get. They want capitalism, but they still want the main control of the Communist Party. They want to fund the money. They want to say who's going to do what, but they're going for it. There's no question. They're putting a lot of money into it, and they're trying to recruit people, certainly discourage people from leaving. The problem that we see in Europe, and England's a great example, is when people start thinking about innovation, the first comment that comes out is, let's have another meeting, as opposed to let's go away and think about this. So I'm not all that worried, frankly, about foreign competition and our place in the international community in terms of innovation. I think it's in our culture. I think we have amazing people. And as I said, we have funding, and we have people who are always looking to fund great ideas, and we're lucky we do. But, it's just not a good idea to constantly make things so much harder than they have to be, which is really, I think, what Trump has been doing. He just makes it so much harder than it has to be.
To that point, if you're saying, the United States is the innovation capital of the world, we have the money, we have the funding, how much of a barrier do you think is that six-figure number, that $100,000? I mean, is that going to really deter companies? I know you said companies like Microsoft, that's not a problem for them, that's a drop in the bucket, but do you think that's going to be a real deterrence for other companies?
The money is a symbol. I think it's going to signal, we're just not enthusiastic about these people coming here. And they're going to think, if I bring somebody here, I'm going to have the government looking over my shoulder and seeing what I'm doing. And they might start looking into me, my practices, and then start saying, you're guilty of DEI. Who knows, right? I think it's more that. And again, that's the whole point, is the culture. You want to allow creativity. You don't want the government involved. And I think this signal is we are going to be involved. We're going to make it harder. And frankly, we just don't like these people coming here. I mean, that's really the truth. And that is what is so bad.
And to that point, if you're a company and you're thinking, hey, because of this decision, I could have the money to go through with this decision, but I might be in the crosshairs of the Trump administration. What does that do for innovation?
Well, I cannot say it squelches it, because then I'd say I know where it comes from. A lot of these companies really don't necessarily come up with anything that's great. The great ones they are at their peak. But there are always going to be people trying. I mean, as long as you can think, remember, the freedom part is really what's critical. And as long as you have ideas, and as long as you have dreams, as long as you have ambitions, and someone can help you out with the money, we're going to have innovation. It's just stuff we don't know, right? It could be on the margin that someone is discouraged from doing something that could have made a difference or could have helped somebody. Again, it's back to my point. Why make it harder? This is so important for us in so many different ways. Why make it the thing that improves our quality of life, often in an unpredictable way? Because there's spillovers of innovations. They do things we didn't anticipate them doing. Why are foreign people the enemy when we're using them to help us really do the most important thing that an economy can do in terms of promoting the material quality of life? That, to me, is what I just don't get.
You recently wrote that this was just the latest example of what you perceive as President Trump's war on innovation, and he's waged this war before in the past 9 months of his second term. Can you talk to us about those examples that you think you've seen?
Well, I mean, certainly starting again with tariffs, keeping out foreign competitors. Foreign competition is very important. I mean, if you can't, you're too young to probably remember the good old days when we did not have, Japanese competitors. It was just the big three. And, I hate to think what would happen if we never had Japanese auto companies starting to compete with the American auto companies and then coming here and competing with them. I mean, they completely changed this industry. I think it's possible that even the Chinese EV companies might be able to make a considerable difference. I want them to compete fairly. They get a lot of money from their government, and understandably, American companies will complain about that. But still, it'd be interesting to see what they can do. And there are countless other examples. So certainly, we start with that. But again, it's still the culture. You have NSF and other government organizations who are in the business, so to speak, of funding innovation, and they say, well, we're cutting back. What's that going to do? I mean, I'm somebody who has benefit from getting funds from the NSF. Trump might say my research isn't worth anything. Well, fair enough, but there's a lot of other people who've got NSF grants, and their whole careers have flourished because of that. So again, it all really comes back to a culture, in terms of making funding available from the government. That's one thing. Having competitors from abroad, that's another. I think that in general has been the whole problem with the attitude of the government toward competition in this economy and how it can lead to innovation.
Do you think this attitude then is indicative to anything in the future? Because we're only 9 months in, a little over 9 months into President Trump's second term. I mean, What do you think that means for the future?
I think he's made it clear he wants to run all aspects of the economy. And an important aspect of the economy is how it innovates. And he's not going to be able to stop some guy from coming up with something in his garage, but he could certainly affect if this guy gets funding. He could certainly affect who he's able to work with if this person wanted to deal with foreign people. These kinds of things are going to add up. And I think it gets back to control, that he wants to run things. And I think what's probably even more dangerous, he thinks he knows better and that he should be running things. I mean, I think you have to look at his background. I think that's sort of an interesting angle, which often is not really stressed. Remember, he's in real estate, building. He was not about high tech, innovation. His innovations was dealing with banks and trying to get money from them, right? That's the extent of his experience with innovation. He was never involved at the ground level of, any breakthroughs in technology for building or any of the high-tech things that we think of now or computers. That's not in his life. He wasn't educated that way. It's not his business experience. So I think his own personal experience has never really led him to appreciate the value and power of innovation. To a certain extent, he seems afraid of it. He seems sort of technophobic. I mean, he was always dumping on electric vehicles. I don't think they're going to work, or obviously he doesn't believe in climate change. He's very cynical about autonomous vehicles, even though, billions are going into that, and that's going to make a huge difference in mobility. Obviously, he's against congestion pricing. So when you actually think about his instincts and background, they really are anti-innovation. He's never really appreciated it. He hasn't really experienced it. And in opportunities he has to support, he's generally pretty negative about it. So I think we really know where he's coming from in all this. And then most importantly, he doesn't surround himself with anybody who really is pro-tech except for Elon Musk. And I think we know what's happened in that relationship. So, none of this is good for an environment, for thinking about innovation.
There's also bleak news for college grads who are graduating in fields like tech and IT. It's very hard for them to find jobs, and the White House said that the H-1B program made it harder for them to find jobs. We know San Francisco is a giant tech hub, and here's a headline from the San Francisco Standard published in May. Sorry, grads, entry-level tech jobs are getting wiped out. And in the tech industry, employing recent college grads at the top 15 biggest companies plunged by over 50% since 2019, according to a recent report. So how much of that do you think is the H-1B visa's fault versus other things like AI or other factors? What do you think of that? And do you think that this implication of this fee is going to fix that for college grads, recent college grads?
I don't want to overstate the fee in this regard. It's an interesting coincidence. While you're reporting this news out in the Bay Area, I actually read today a story about economists. The job market for economists is taking a real hit. New PhDs, in terms of openings, are down 30%. And there's considerable concern for what people are going to do who've spent all this time and money to get a PhD when academic jobs aren't open. And now, there used to be sort of tech jobs for a lot of these people, and they're raising concerns about that. I think the importance there is AI. Increasingly, a lot of people are saying, do we really need to hire expensive PhDs for some of these jobs when we think we can have AI do some of this stuff? So I think that's another part of all of this that's really going to be important. That's not necessarily going to hurt innovation. It may help it, but at the same time, it's going to call people to sort of try to get better in terms of their skill set. And I don't think we want to try to discourage people from doing that, but it's going to be a tougher environment for them. Let me put it that way. Again, putting in restrictions on who's coming in, that's not going to help us. That is not the answer to dealing with this problem. This is a demographic problem too. We're having fewer college graduates, so that's also going to be part of this.
And your headline suggests that this is the latest example, from what you say, of a war on innovation. You didn't say that this was the end of the war on innovation. So what do you think is next? What are you looking out for?
It'll be interesting to first of all see how Congress looks after they get back to work, and see what's left, so to speak, of agencies for that. I think what's the most important thing is a champion. Someone has got to start speaking up for these kinds of things. I'm looking hopefully to the universities standing en masse against Trump, not going along with his desires to have them limit foreign enrollment and make any other compromises that he may ask. I think they're an important source of resistance, so to speak, because that's where a lot of innovation can come from at the university. I'm really hoping the day comes when the private sector starts leading in this area. These are the people who provide it. These are people who benefit from it. I think that hopefully they're going to say, look, we're going too far in America first. And without putting it that way, say, look, we really need to get our focus on innovation. This is not the threat that Trump is making it out to be. If we want to solve any employment issues, that will be done with the private sector. They're the ones who do it. It's not the government. Certainly now under Trump, government is not going to be a source of jobs, just the opposite. So I think they need to convince him, look, we want to improve the economy. It's the private sector that does it. Don't make it harder for us, okay? We're going to do the right things in terms of how we're going to go about innovation. We're not looking to replace Americans with machines or foreign people. We're going to make rational decisions that I think are going to be good for the economy. So I think between the universities and the private sector, what I'm going to be looking is for them, I think, to try to take some leadership here in responding to Trump and really his efforts, which I think are counterproductive to innovation.
Well, I always appreciate our conversations. Clifford Winston, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope we can have another one soon.
Look forward to it.